For my EDFX348 practicum from the 15th of June to the 3rd of July in 2020, I was placed at a Southwest Sydney all-boys Catholic high school. The lesson that I'll reflect upon is a 60-minute Year 12 construction class, flippantly described to me as the worst of the worst. The school is situated in a low SES area, and the class consists of students all doing a 2-unit ATAR NESA-accredited construction course. The class dynamics is a majority of EALD students, some with learning difficulties and some with behavioural issues, with most placed on either a personal learning plan or a behavioural plan. Yet, speaking with the students, some chose the subject as a career path, while others felt that they were pushed into the subject as it being an easy subject. The component of the unit that I did teach is brick and block laying. The unit is devised around a theory component and a practical component, with a practical assessment where the students will either pass or fail and be deemed either competent or not competent. The lesson was a lesson that the ACU practicum assessor was going to assess me on for my midpoint assessment. The lesson was a practical lesson and was held outdoors. The structure of the lesson was to demonstrate to the students the culmination of all the separate activities that they had been practicing in a demonstration of how to brick up a wall for their assessment and start them off on the first part of their assessment. The lesson was the 5th lesson in a sequence block of 10 lessons over a 3-week period, culminating in the students successfully building a brick wall 1200 by 600 in a stretcher bond with an iron finished as their assessment. I started off the lesson with a toolbox talk, which is actually a hook, which consisted of all the mandatory WHS requirements and explaining to the class that today I will be demonstrating how they will brick up their wall, and then they have to start their own walls, which will be assessed. I realised that the students were itching to start on the practical part since the theory had all been done and the separate components like buttering bricks and cutting bricks on the brick saw were also accomplished. I explained to the students that this was the most important part that they needed to understand. They settled and took in the instructions. At this point is where I realised if I had my time again, I would change things. I had a demonstration all set up where I demonstrated the actual assessment that the students were going to do. Throughout the whole demonstration, which took about 20 minutes, I was talking aloud and giving the students instructions of what to do and what not to do. Upon reflection, I realized this was a mistake because this was too much information overload. Some students relished in the way I was teaching, but after speaking to the students and gathering information, I gained insight that these students all had previous experience in bricklaying, whether it was labouring for an uncle or previous experience in a trade school form. Using Vygotsky's model of zone of proximal development, I found out what the students knew, showed them where they needed to be, and provided instruction, demonstration, and reiteration on how to get there. According to Vygotsky, much important learning by the child occurs through social interaction with a skillful tutor. The tutor may model behaviours and/or provide verbal instruction for the child. Vygotsky refers to this as cooperative or collaborative dialogue. Even though I received good feedback from my university tertiary supervisor and my mentor teacher, where my tertiary supervisor suggested that I may try to incorporate the pair approach and SMART goals in my future lessons, I now realise that it would be more beneficial for the students had I been all set up to start and I demonstrated a small part of the lesson and got the students to do what I demonstrated right away in a step-by-step actualization. Then demonstrated some more and got the students to repeat that, enacting the I do, we do, you do gradual release of responsibility teaching strategy. Upon reflection, I realized that it took me months of constant practice to properly grasp the skill of laying bricks and years of constant bricklaying to master the art of properly setting out and properly laying bricks. Yet these students are getting assessed on a competency after a simple demonstration. The direct instruction approach that I undertook was okay, and it had been taught by many a teacher. But according to Hamzy, students with low academic self-concept profited more from cooperative instruction than from direct instruction because they experienced a feeling of greater competence. So, had I set up a jigsaw type style classroom where I was at the center teaching the students in a step-by-step style, more students can be guided towards greater feeling of competence, which increases motivation and can lead to a better academic performance. My mentor teacher gave me autonomy over the lesson and over the whole unit. With this autonomy, I was able to cater for the diverse learning needs of my students. I catered for all my students by having a visual demonstration. I also catered for the diverse learning needs by thinking out aloud the steps that they should be doing so that the students always had a reference of what to do and what was next and repeating the narrative. I also went around and helped students that were stuck or needed guidance. Reflecting upon my actions in that class, since it was an outdoor class, any other visual prompts would not have worked. Therefore, when the students were underway, I found myself, while labouring for the students, more around the diverse learning needs students, giving explicit instructions and visual guidance. Since this was a training competency, the assessment could not be altered, but how we got there to achieve the competency, I catered for. Dissecting my teaching videos, I realised that I've used a few teaching theories that I was taught. The students were conditioned before this lesson. In prior lessons, I used Skinner's operant conditioning through punishment and shaping, with the threat of detention to stop behaviour. But when the practical started, the behaviour students that started to misbehave were put in line by the rest of the class in their native tongue. At the time, I did not understand what was said, but upon asking a couple of students what was said, they told the misbehaving student to stop distracting the class and start contributing to the class because they were actually learning something. At this point, the realization came that the students were engaged within the lesson. They wanted to participate and they were present, and the foundations were set beforehand were now being paid dividends. I would like to take credit for all this, but I'm not sure if I can, because I do not know if it was actually my doing or something that the students actually wanted to do. I incorporated Maslow's hierarchy of needs by creating a safe environment, and the students felt a sense of belonging. I reiterated this by stating that if they participated and did well, I'd have their backs. And this provided them with fulfilled esteem, and by showing them what to do and respect. I let them have the feeling of self-actualization by taking pride in their achievements once they completed their assessments. Maslow states that humans strive to realize personal potential, self-fulfillment, seeking personal growth, and peak experiences. A desire to become everything one is capable of becoming. Upon reflection, practical lessons are best learnt using a relatively new learning theory, Klobb's experiential learning cycle, where learning is the process whereby knowledge is created through the transformation of experience. Coming from a construction background, where I was a bricklayer for the past 20 years, I sensed that the students saw immediately that I knew what I was talking about. They realised that I could get them over the line with their assessments, and the rapport that I built up with them and the trust I had in them and they had in me diminished the behavioural issues, minimised the learning difficulties because I showed them what to do and kept reinforcing what they needed to do and how they're going to accomplish the task. I did not hang them out to dry and hope for the best. I laboured for them and I did all the dirty work, which allowed them to concentrate on the aspects of their assessment. While I was labouring, I was still supporting the students by giving them verbal instructions and would stop and demonstrate, ensuring that all the students were on track. This is why I believe most of my lessons went well. Not to say that they were all perfect, and given the opportunity, and hopefully one day I will change to a jigsaw style type teaching method where the extension students will forge ahead while the core and the support students will be supported better, and I can slowly then peel back my gradual release of responsibility and let the students extend themselves.